Folks, this is Pastor Dave Grisham with For God and Country Ministries, and I probably should have done my high-tech dry erase board before I started my live video. But it's been a while since we went live, so just pardon the intrusion here. If you want to donate to our ministry, we're going to be doing a lot of ministry, especially late February on into March. Our ministry will be going to New Orleans to preach at Mardi Gras for a week. Then we'll be off to Alaska for a week to preach at Ferrandi and the Iditarod. And then when I get back, we're going to go to spring break at South Padre Island and preach to 80 to 100,000 screaming, drinking college kids. So there's going to be quite a bit of expenses. There's a lot of money spent and a lot of time, and we need tracts and travel expenses like
In Florida.
In Florida, yes, we're going to go down to the Pasco County Gay Pride first week in February, even before that, and so there'll be a lot of gas, a lot of hotel expenses and food and things like that. So we have a lot of expenses. So if you want to donate to our ministry, you can donate to $ for God and Country Dave. $ for God and Country Dave, and any amount would be appreciated. I would appreciate any amount that you could give. It's $5, $10, $20, $100, whatever you can give would be greatly appreciated, because our expenses are considerable on these outreaches. So today's message, I'm sure as you've seen on the YouTube, on the title, is called When Atheists Experience a Miracle. Now, God is in the miracle business, and I'll tell you a little story. This doesn't have anything to do with atheists, but there was a story that occurred in Afghanistan right after the Taliban were driven out of Afghanistan when we first started fighting over there 20 years ago. And these two Christians, the missionaries started pouring into the country after the Taliban was pushed out. So it was a little bit safer for missionaries. And the missionaries started pouring into the country. Well, one day, these two missionary men were driving in this car, and they had the whole back seat and the trunk loaded up with cases of Bibles in the native language. I believe it's Pushtu. I'm not 100% sure on that. But they were carrying 2,500 Bibles in the back of their car, just crammed full. And they were going to go to this village and hand these Bibles out. And they were just they felt like called to go there. So they're driving down this road through the mountains, and suddenly they come around this corner, and there's an old man with a goat standing in the middle of the road, and he flags them down. And immediately they get suspicious because, well, they're concerned that maybe there's still some Taliban around, and maybe this is some kind of a setup, maybe it's some kind of an ambush. And so they are concerned about this, and they're kind of apprehensive. And the old man wants to talk to them, and they spoke the language, and they rolled down their window, and he said, and I'm quoting, "Are you the men with the Bibles?" And they didn't know what to say. They were like, uh-oh, this really might be a setup. This really might be an ambush. And he said, "Are you the men with the Bibles?" And then he went on to explain that the night before, 2,500 men in this village, a different village than the one they were going to, had the same dream on the same night. And everyone had the same dream, and it was of Jesus coming to the man of the household and saying that on that particular time, on that particular road, there'd be two men with a carload of Bibles that would be coming down that road, and those Bibles were for them, and they needed to follow Jesus, not Muhammad. Now, the Muslims place great importance on dreams. And so this was a miracle in the form of a dream that came to all these Muslims. And sure enough, after he explained this to these two men, they said, well, I guess we're not going to that other village. We're going to go to this one. And so they stopped and they gave the Bibles out, and 2,500 men Muslim men gave their lives to Jesus Christ that day. So you see, God is in the miracle business. God communicates to men in ways that we cannot explain, that are supernatural in nature. The Bible is full of accounts like this: healings, words of knowledge, prophetic words, all kinds of things have happened. And so God is in the miracle business. This is a lot of what he does. And a lot of people want to see miracles, they want to pray for healing and all this kind of stuff, but God intervenes in these events when his name gets glorified and when he's trying to accomplish a mission. And in this case, 2,500 heads of household got saved, and probably all the women and children after that. So this entire village gave their lives to Christ. So this was a great miracle. In any case, but today's title is entitled, When Atheists Experience a Miracle. And atheists sometimes do experience miracles. When this happens, God is trying to tell the atheist that he is real, he does exist, and that he has the supernatural ability to reach into the natural world and change something significantly, to change the outcome of an event or to predict the future or something like that. But it's a supernatural nature that an atheist will not be able to explain. I'll give you a couple of examples. One from Lee Strobel that I read about, and one from my own personal experience when I was an atheist. Lee Strobel wrote the book, The Case for Christ. He also wrote The Case for Easter, The Case for Christmas. He's written several award-winning Christian books. Well, he used to be an avowed atheist. When he was a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist for a newspaper in Chicago, he was an avowed atheist. As a matter of fact, he wasn't just an atheist, he was an anti-theist. He didn't like Christianity at all. He was quite hostile to Christianity. He looked at it as a backwards religion that was holding people back from coming to the truth and dealing with reality or whatever. That's how a lot of atheists feel. So he started writing a book called The Case Against Christ, and it turned into The Case for Christ. Because in the midst of that, he was led to Christ by the evidence itself. The evidence itself that he dug up became a testimony. The historical evidence, archaeological and historical evidence, led him to Christ. But before that, when he was still an atheist, his wife gave birth to their first child, a son. This happened, I believe, when he was about 5 weeks old. I might be slightly mistaken on that exact time frame, but I believe he was about 5 weeks old. He had just been born, and suddenly he started running an extremely high fever. He got very sick, started having convulsions. They took him to the hospital, and he coded, which means his heart stopped 2 or 3 times, and they had to revive him. The last time it coded, Lee Strobel was so distraught and so upset that even as an avowed atheist, an anti-theist, he dropped to his knees and he cried out to God. And he said, if you are real, God, if you are there and you are real, please heal my son. He's done nothing wrong. Please have mercy on my son and heal him. Right after that prayer, within that hour, his son was miraculously healed. His fever went completely away, returned to normal. The convulsions stopped. He was no longer coding. Nothing happened. And the doctors were stunned because the doctors had no idea what had made him so violently ill, and they had no idea why it stopped so suddenly. There was no medical explanation for it whatsoever. It was so dramatic that the next day he was so completely normal that they released him and sent him home. He came in that night before so deathly ill that he almost passed away on several occasions. But after that one prayer, he was so miraculously healed that the next day he went home completely normal. and it never happened again. Now, this did not lead Lee Strobel to Christ. Now, it may have planted a seed in his heart, and that's what I want to talk about here in a little while. At this point, he did not come to Christ. He blew it off as just coincidence. Once the crisis was over, he went right back to his atheism. He went right back to not believing in God. He went right back to trying to rationalize everything and believe everything in a materialistic way. You know, there's only 3 dimensions, and there is no spiritual dimension, and all of that. He went right back to what made him comfortable in the world that would justify his sin in his life. So, anyway, but later on, that may have planted a seed that later on helped lead him to Christ. Now, my own personal experience was a little different, as it is probably for anyone, because most of these things seem to be custom tailored to the person that it affects, because God is a very personal God. He wants a personal relationship with us. You know, Jesus Christ dying on the cross was not business. You know, like the mafia guy, when he's about to kill you, he says, hey, don't worry about it. It's not personal, it's just business. This is not business with God. This is personal. Anybody that God saves, it is completely personal. When he died on that cross, it was personally for each and every one of us. And so his miracles are just as personal. They're very personal attention that God pays to one individual person or their needs. And he intervenes directly from heaven into the natural world, from the supernatural into the natural. I've often told people that the finite cannot reach out to the infinite, but the infinite can reach down to the finite. And that's why we can't save ourselves. God had to reach down to us through Jesus Christ on the cross. The infinite can reach down to the finite, but not the other way around. So the supernatural can intervene in the natural, but not the other way around. So when this happens, it is very personal. God is taking a very personal interest in someone's situation, and he's trying to communicate to you very personally. I want you to remember that if you are an atheist out there watching this video and you have had a personal experience with a miracle, maybe you don't even talk about it. Maybe it happened and you blew it off. But anyway, I'll get to that in a moment. Let's go with my experience. When I was in college, I was an atheist. I was attending West Texas State University, which is now called West Texas A&M. It's in Canyon, Texas. And I was living in this apartment, and I had split up with my girlfriend who had been living with me. And she left. And a couple of weeks later, my best friend, his name was Danny, he came to my apartment to try to kind of console me or whatever, you know, and said, hey, man, let's go to lunch. And so we were sitting in my living room of my apartment, and we were having this discussion about where we were going to go eat. And he said something, and I don't remember exactly the phrase that he stated, but it had something to do with going to eat lunch. But he made this particular statement, a phrase, that was the exact phrase I remember him saying in a dream. And all of a sudden, the entire dream came back to my memory. A dream that I'd had about 2 or 3 nights before. And I told Danny it was a deja vu because, of course, I wasn't a Christian. I was an atheist, so I never would have used the term prophetic dream. I used the term deja vu. I said, Danny, I just had the strongest deja vu I've ever had in my life. He says, what do you mean? I said, well, I had a dream about 2 or 3 nights ago, and in this dream, we were sitting in my living room having this exact same conversation, and you made that exact phrase, and that's what triggered the dream, and the memory of the dream in my mind, and I remember the dream, and we were having this exact conversation and everything. I said, but here's the real kicker. I remember a head in the dream. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, in the dream, about 5 minutes from now, a police officer comes to my apartment door, but he's looking for someone else. And Danny said, well, that'd be really freaky if that actually happened. I said, yeah, it would. So we went back to our conversation, and lo and behold, about 5 minutes later, we finished up the conversation. And we decided to go get in Danny's car and go off to lunch. We had decided where we were going to go eat. And so we went out of the apartment. I locked the door. We walked down the set of stairs because the apartments had the doors going directly outside. It wasn't like there was a hallway in the middle. It was like a motel. You went directly outside, and there was a stairwell because I lived on the second floor, and it went right down to the parking lot. So we went down the stairs, and we were just about to get into Danny's car, and guess what pulls up in the parking lot? A deputy sheriff's car. And we watched this deputy sheriff's car pull up right next to Danny's car and park. And we're both looking at each other like, seriously? And at that point, it was kind of, we were both a little bit on edge. And the officer got out of the car. He walked up the stairs, went to my apartment door, and knocked on my apartment. And I said, excuse me, officer, but that's my apartment. How may I help you? And he said, well, I was trying to find this guy, and he's rattled off a name, and he waved this piece of paper in his hand. He said, I've got a warrant for the arrest of this young man named such and such, and I don't remember the name. It's for unpaid traffic tickets. And he said, I went to his apartment, but he's not home. And I know this apartment complex, this big complex is full of college students. So I just picked your door at random and came and knocked on it, thinking you might know this man and where I might find him. And I said, no, officer, I don't know him. I haven't lived here very long. The only people I know are the people next door, just the people that are living next door. And he said, okay, sorry to bother you. And he got back in his car and he drove off. And Danny and I were standing there with our mouths hanging open, stunned by what we had just experienced. How was I able to predict? And let's take a look at, let's break down the elements of this, okay? Because I did this afterwards. I thought, I was sort of because as an atheist, I tried to be logical. I tried to be logical. So I was trying to break down, okay, what are the odds of me having a dream about someone coming to my door? Okay, so you got to figure that. Now, it wasn't my mom who would be likely to come to my door if she was in town. It wasn't Danny. He had already come to the door and was in the apartment. And what are the odds that we would be having that exact conversation at that exact moment, and he would say that exact phrase? And then what are the odds that 5 minutes later, a police officer whom you do not normally interact with, unless you're a criminal, you don't have normal interactions with a police officer. Not every day, that's for sure. And he would randomly choose my apartment out of all the hundreds of apartments in that apartment complex. I mean, there must have been 200 or 300 apartments in that complex. It was pretty good size. And out of all those apartments, he comes to my door. And just like the dream said, he was looking for someone else. So you got exact conversation, exact place, exact time, exact phrase, exact door, exact time, because it was 5 minutes, and exact person, and exact prediction that he was looking for someone else. There's 8 things there that occurred in order. In exact order of the dream. Now, mind you, this is like a combination lock with all the numbers having to be in the right order for this to take place. Okay? So you have to look at it not just each individual facet of the dream, but you had to look at it in the order that it was in. What are the odds that all 8 of those things, and only those 8 things, would happen in the dream and in reality, and they would happen exactly in that order on that exact day? The odds of that are mind-boggling. Absolutely. I thought about this for weeks after it happened. It was bothering me for weeks. What this was was God reaching down to me and saying, "You think I'm not real? Explain this." And he reached out and touched me in a dream. And then that one phrase, boom, brought it back into remembrance. And I was flabbergasted by this. It's difficult to explain the feeling that you have when you experience this unless you've actually experienced it. I'm sure Lee Strobel, struggled with that incident that happened with him and his son, how his son got miraculously healed only after he prayed. And exactly just a few minutes later, he prayed and almost instantly, boom, it was granted. And so he just blew that off as coincidence. So did I. I didn't come to Christ at that moment. But after I came to Christ, I realized that God was watching me even then, that God had not forgotten me even as a sinner. He knew who I was. Now, I didn't know him. We didn't have a relationship. If I had died at that time, I would have most certainly gone to hell. But I think the Lord knew I was not going to die at that time, and someday that I would be serving him, and this would be a testimony. And when I did not believe, he reached down and touched my life. The supernatural reached down into the natural through a dream and gave me a prediction of the future of something that was totally random. Totally random. I mean, it's not like trying to predict the stock market going up or down. At least you've got some basis of where you think it's going to go based on past record. This was totally out of the blue, like a bolt out of the blue, completely random. And it can only be explained by that there is a God, and he knows the future, even the little weird things that happen. He knows what's going to happen. And so he predicted that a police officer on that day would come to my door looking for someone else. It was one of the most amazing things that's ever happened to me in my life. So I want to talk to you atheists for just a minute before I get off of here. If you are an atheist, there are some of you out there that have probably had these experiences where God has reached into your life at some point, even as an atheist, and touched your life. The supernatural has come down to the natural and touched your life in some way. And there's a miracle that you may have experienced that you cannot explain. And if that is the case, I want you to know, speaking as a former atheist myself, there is a God. He is real. And if he can reach into the natural and change things in the natural. And I just want to tell you, if that has happened to you, it means God is interested in you. It means he wants to have a relationship with you. It means he cares. He cares enough to reach down and touch your life even when you won't bend your knee to him. That shows you how loving and a merciful God that we serve. That he would be willing to reach down and pay attention to somebody who was as against God as could possibly be. Lee Strobel was an anti-theist. I'm not sure I was that radical, but I was an atheist. I didn't really believe there was a God at that time. But I just want to let you know there that if you are an atheist watching this video, and some of you do watch my stuff, I know, because I get all kinds of comments from you on this channel. I get comments also on my Facebook. You can find For God and Country David Grisham on YouTube, and you can find For God and Country also on Facebook. And if you're an atheist and you're watching this video, I want you to know that God knows who you are. It's no secret. And he does have a personal interest in you, especially if you've experienced a miracle that you cannot explain. If you cannot explain it, it's because the supernatural is not explainable in the natural. It's so far above our comprehension and understanding. God is much bigger than our 3-pound brain. We can't fit him in there. There's so much more to him to know than could possibly meet the eye or the mind. If you look at the world only through rational thoughts, you're going to limit yourself to a very small portion of reality. The biggest portion of reality is the spiritual realm in which God resides. And that's where all the authority for the natural realm comes from. Our absolute moral laws are written by an absolute moral lawgiver. Rape is always wrong, and murdering babies is always wrong, because there's a God in heaven who wrote that, and his law, his morality transcends the opinions of men. And it's objectively true whether no matter what our opinions are. Chattel slavery is an abomination in the eyes of God and Scripture, and it's an abomination in reality. It's just it's another absolute truth. And if there is absolute truth, there is absolutely a God who wrote that truth. And I just want you to know, if you're an atheist watching this tonight, and if you've experienced a miracle, don't blow it off. Don't blow it off. Pay attention. Get on your knees and cry out to God. You might see another miracle. You might give your life to Christ and be a miracle. So anyway, I just want to make this quick video tonight for any of you atheists. I've been having some pretty good conversations with a number of you online on Messenger and Facebook and the comments, on the YouTube channel. So, and I've been at the universities, I talk with a lot of you in person. So I've been having some good conversations with atheists here lately, and I'd like that to continue. And I do pray for you guys, because I used to walk in your shoes. I know what it's like. I want to tell you that the grass is greener on this side of the fence. It really is. So in any case, if you've experienced a miracle, it's because you've been touched by God. Get on your knees. Let him touch you again with salvation through Jesus Christ. It'll change your life, and you'll never want to go back. God bless you all, and good night.